Get out the insurance cards, get out the copays. The office is open, my friends. Brought to you by drroto.com.
What is up? Welcome in. We are the One and Done Show. We are your fast break for college basketball DFS information. We are midway through a pretty awesome sweat on these first half of the Sweet 16 games. I am Eric Romoff. You can catch me on Twitter at FantasyNav. And he is that dude, Mike Holland, about to win every tournament that's on the board tonight. Fight through all of these jinx I'm going to throw at him. And he's going to keep spinning these winners out for you on the One and Done Show. Mike, apart from a good sweat that we're going to go through live with everyone out there watching, how's it going tonight?
It's going good, man. I got the door cracked so the dog can come visit us if he needs to. So, hopefully nothing too crazy going on with that. But, this is an exciting slate going on right now. We have really a contrasting slate for tomorrow. A lot of good defensive teams. Some no total that really just blows you out of the water. It's gonna be a lot of fun. It's just different ways to build these things, man. You got to get creative, and we see it today. We saw 60% Yamude completely bust, and so hey, things like that are going to happen. And we're just here to try to make you some coin. Last few slates coming up, so we're here to bring it to you.
Man, so if I can be vulnerable for a second, I need you to close that door. I was watching the Twitter comments, and people are here for Rhodey taking over this show. So while he's adorable, while he is chiming in often in the background, like I'm trying to keep this host gig. I can't have this cute dog just bumping me out of my chair.
Yeah, for real, man. Let's see if we can say hi. Hey, get up here, buddy.
There's the dude now, the real star of the One and Done Show. He's the inspiration.
Right,
he lives in the house that Hoops built. And the house that we're building for this slate tomorrow, another 4-gamer, kind of like you mentioned, not a whole lot of difference between these games, right? They're all kind of in the mid-130s, low 140s. Relatively tight games. I mean, obviously St. Peter's is on that Cinderella run, so they are the biggest underdog on the slate. But maybe kind of walk us through the big picture for these games tomorrow, right? Today, the pricing was really soft. Seems like we got a lot of that same medicine here for tomorrow. But what are your initial thoughts in terms of how this one's going to come together for you?
Yeah, so initial thoughts. I'm really looking at this North Carolina UCLA game. I think that could be probably the fastest game on the slate. Man, it's kind of crazy though, because you look at it here. St. Peter's, kind of slow here. Providence pretty slow. UCLA is slow. Iowa State is one of the slowest. So you got a lot of teams that there's just not going to be a lot of tempo, which is why we see, no total over 142 as it sits. I'm looking to kind of do what we did today. 2-2, 3-2 stacks. Get the game that's kind of blow up here, and then obviously as we were going through our builds today, trying to find the the one or two pieces under 6%. If I knew Paulo Banchero was going to be 6%, I would have had 30 to 40%. So it's just tough to find out what everyone's going to do here, right? But I think just because the totals are low doesn't necessarily mean just because Iowa State is really good defensively doesn't mean that one of the Miami guards can't pop off here. So just kind of building through, working through, finding where we can kind of get different. And just really attacking, a couple of games here on most of our lineups.
Yeah, definitely more of like a kind of peanut butter spread in terms of exposure across all of the teams on the board tomorrow. So we will kick off with the aforementioned Cinderella story, the 15 seed St. Peter's Peacocks, all reserved commentary on their mascot, but they're still dancing. They are going against the eventual champion, at least per the One and Done Show, the number 3 seed Purdue team. Why don't you kick us off with the Boilermaker side, Mike?
Yeah, so Purdue, this is not a good matchup. St. Peter's is on the Cinderella run, but you just look at the metrics and yeah, there's not a lot to like here for St. Peter's as far as looking at the game on a macro level. Ken Palm here, 73-63 Purdue. Purdue second in offensive efficiency. Fourth in effective field goal percentage. They can shoot the three. St. Peter's, man, the way they're getting it done is crazy. They're getting a couple of massive performances from some of their guys and just really playing that underdog role, right? When you look at it on a macro level, they're 224th in offensive efficiency. They're 266th in effective field goal percentage. They're 266th from the free throw line. So I don't see a way here how the run continues. But then again, that's why we play the games, right? So for me on the Purdue side, they're interesting, right? They've been interesting all year. It's the big three. It's Jaden Ivey at 8,200, the guard here, who NBA potential. He has 35 to 40 fantasy point upside. We really haven't seen that recently. And then you have the two bigs, Edey and Williams. Edey being 7,500, Williams being 7,100. It's just tough, right? Because they both play that 5 spot. They rarely play together. So you're just never going to get more than 24 minutes from one of them while the other one suffers from, the 16 minutes that he's going to get. Their rates are out of control, but it's, Purdue's just kind of tough to really stack because the two of their best players one of them's not going to see but maybe 15 to 16 minutes. So what are your thoughts on Purdue?
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? Like a lot of what we talked about with the slate today that we broke down yesterday, pricing is such where you can kind of do whatever you want, right? Like most of the year, we've really been looking at whichever of the better points per dollar value between Edey and Williams is going to be the one that we're going to have more of. Now they're basically the same price, right? I'm almost kind of looking at it very much so like we saw with Timmy and Holmgren on tonight's slate, right? These are going to be two of the more desirable big men on the board for this 4-game slate. And I think we're going to find more people going towards Edey because he's just a little bit more expensive than Williams. I don't know if that kind of finger in the air read is what you're getting, or if you think it's going to be a little bit more even in terms of ownership between the two.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, right? We've seen slates where we were surprised that these guys were 10%, 15%. So you're right, though. They're both going to be desirable here. Trevion Williams, 31 fantasy points against Texas here. Both of them are going to have the size advantage here. You can't play them both like you could at Timmy and Holmgren. So you're going to have to pick which one. And I don't know if you can put them with Ivy. They're only projected to score 73 points here. St. Peter's actually a pretty good defensive team. They're 28th in the country in defensive efficiency. So, man, I don't know here. I just feel like you're probably going to pick one of these three, and it's really just a kind of a roulette wheel here, right? I would expect their ownership to maybe be 15 to 20% each, just based on looking at the slate on a big picture level here, because you're going to have a little more coin to spend than we did yesterday. Today that's happening. Yesterday we were talking about how hard it was to find value, right? So I think today, and you look at the St. Peter's side, like you've got guys that are, going to play significant minutes on their side that are under 5,500 mark. So I think for me, I'm really looking at Trevion Williams. He's just so good. He's a great passer. He has legit, like 15, 8, and 8 upside here. So definitely someone I'm looking to lock into my lineups. I don't think he's going to make my core, but if I'm picking a piece from this game, which we're probably going to want to do on most of our lineups, he's probably the one that I'm picking. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, that core from yesterday is actively running roughshod through this entire field. So if Trevion Williams is not in there, certainly no slight to him, but Mike's been dialed in on his core all year. For me, I feel like anytime I see Ivy under 9K, it's really hard for me to avoid him. But I also want to get your thoughts. They're not going to see as many minutes as some of the cheap options on the other side of this game, but there are some kind of sub 5K options for the Boilermakers that at least can offer some salary relief and get you into this game in sort of a unique way, right? Most people, all of their Boilermaker exposure are going to be across those three players, Edie, Ivy, and Williams. So, looking at the paid down options among the starters, Stefanik, Gillis, anything there for you, or is that just a little too cute?
Yeah, man, I've really been jamming in Stefanovic on a lot of our GPP spots here. We've kind of fallen off here as we've wound down the season here. I mean, he's 5K. He can shoot the three ball here. The rates aren't anything to really, they're going to jump off the page here, but I don't mind taking shots in the large field tomorrow. Try to win that big coin there. Mason Gillis, another large field option, 4,700. Just doesn't do that much. So I don't know. Other than Stefanovic and Williams, I'm going to obviously sprinkle in some Ivy and Edie and, playing, 20 lineups. I'll have some shares of them, but I'm looking to really just dial in on Williams. And then I'm going to have maybe like two, maybe a third share of Stefanovic because this slate is a little more cut and dry, it feels like, than the one that we're playing right now. So, definitely a way to get different is to play Stefanovic, but it's not going to be a fun roller coaster watching him hoist up threes and potentially not even getting 30 minutes. So, but that's what we have to do, right? We'll have to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, moving over to the Peacock side of this game, features a lot of value, like you mentioned before. Also features one of the few players on the board tomorrow who saw their price increase overall. Obviously there's not a whole lot of tape and not a lot of background to work off of with getting to know the St. Peter's Peacocks. So, with the value, with one guy getting a bit of an increase on his price tag, where do your St. Peter's builds start with?
Yeah, I think this is probably the key to the slate. How do you avoid this side? Do we play these guys? I mean, Purdue, for how great they've been on offense, I mean, they're a little lackluster defensively, so I wouldn't be surprised to see, St. Peter's, you can play some pretty good D. Keep this game a little bit closer than what Kim Pom saw. I mean, we talked about that yesterday. Arkansas, a really good defensive team. We were able to put the clamps down on some of the Gonzaga guys, and look what happened. So, not saying that that's going to happen here. St. Peter's doesn't quite have the athletes that Arkansas has, but Casey DeDefo, I mean, good Lord, his rates are insane. He dropped a 48 bomb on Murray State. He's put up multiple 40 fantasy point efforts this year. It's just a really tough matchup, right? I mean, what's the one thing we've been preaching all year is you don't play bigs against Purdue, right? So, and then we saw how he performed, only 15 fantasy points against Sheboygan. I mean, I guess people are going to get, the casual player who hasn't been playing all season is probably going to jam him in looking at his game logs here, but it's a pretty ugly matchup here. I think for me, really looking at Darryl Banks here, big first game with that 38 piece against Kentucky, kind of fell off against Murray State. It's just a wide range of outcomes here. Really good GPP play. I mean, he's going to have to make plays. He's got a 26% shot rate, which is the highest on the team. So, they're going to have to put the ball in the basket in order to keep up with Purdue's offense. So definitely like Banks here at 5,200. And then obviously we have some other options here like an Eddard, everyone's favorite mustache right now, 28 and 19 fantasy points in the first two games at 4,600. I mean, it just feels like he has a safe floor, but is it really that safe? I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I haven't watched too much of this guy this year, but I mean, he can play. So from what I've seen, but to expect him to just go out there and drop another, 4X, 5X, I think he's going to be pretty popular. And if he's going to be popular, I might want to stay away. What do you think?
Yeah, that's kind of the line that I'm taking with the St. Peter's side, right? I'm going to have exposure into this game, but I think it's more about which of these players to fade in terms of which ones to prioritize, right? Looking at Ndefo, I mean, full fade from how I look at it. He's at his season high in terms of price point, and he's going up against this nightmare matchup against the Twin Towers for Purdue. So I'm not going to commit to 0%, but I would like if I didn't have any of him tomorrow. And then the other player is the one that you mentioned, right? Doug Edard is the Cinderella star of this tournament. That busted ass mustache is probably going to get him an extra 10 to 15% ownership than what he normally would. And just generally speaking, I mean, we've done pretty well just kind of fading the public sentiment throughout the season. So I don't think now's the time to stop that. Looking at the Peacocks offense on the whole, a lot of guys look really similar, right? Kind of, mid to high teen shot rate, pretty comparable points per game, pretty comparable distribution of the ball. The one guy that really jumps out is the one that you mentioned as your priority, Darryl Banks, right? 26% shot rate, 13% combined rebound rate. I mean, very much so. He's the guy that's got the outs for you, right? He can fill it up. He can score the ball and get you there that way. Doesn't take a whole lot to cover a 5.2K price tag. And if he gets a little bit cold on the shooting side, he can cover you and get outs and get there a number of different ways. So Banks is really the play that I'm going to be prioritizing. But like I said, I think it's more about who you're fading and just kind of mixing and matching the other Peacocks in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the last guy here, right, Hassan Drum, 27 and 19 fantasy points, another cheap option at 4,300. I think he'll probably be a little bit lower owned than obviously people playing Banks and Eater. You're not going to want to play two of these guys unless you're game stacking this and hoping for the miracle 71-70 St. Peter's moves on to the Elite Eight. But man, that's what narratives are about, right? If you played the right narrative today and you played three Arkansas guys, the three guys that we really talked about yesterday, Tony, Williams, and Note, I mean, you're sitting pretty, right? So there's a narrative here. Like we said, though, this is not the same type of team that Arkansas is. And man, there's just not a lot of teams that are going to throw a 7-foot skilled big at you for an entire 40 minutes of the game and they have 10 fouls. That's kind of unfair. So for me, this game is more of a one-off game. I'm going to stack it maybe one time, maybe like a 2x1. But that's about it for exposure to this game.
So if we're going light exposure on this game, we will roll on to the next game. We have the 1 seed Kansas Jayhawks, the 4 seed Providence Friars. First question, how the hell did the Providence Friars get to the Sweet 16? Like, what is clicking with this team that has them in this position? Because, I mean, at least on this show, neither of us were particularly bullish on their chances in this tournament. And now here they are, playing in the round of 16. So what's working for the Friars?
Yeah, I think Cooley's doing a great job here. We've seen Noah Horkler, 6,800, really raise his game here. For someone that averaged 10 points and 9 rebounds, came out and dropped 30 and 42 fantasy points in the first 2 games. He's just been really good, right? I mean, it's an interesting matchup. Kansas gives them a little bit of a pace-up spot here. They're 64th in tempo. Providence typically likes to play a slower game, but we saw Providence kind of get up and down in the first half. This dog here against South Dakota State. But, the second half, they really put the clamps down defensively. So both teams are pretty good defensively. I was kind of surprised to see the line at 141.5, but I think that's more because Kansas 6th in offensive efficiency and 64th in tempo. So you have to figure that there are going to be some points scored and some up and down transition plays. So definitely don't mind the Providence side. I don't know how much exposure I'm going to have to the Providence side. I do like Noah Horkler. A large field GPP option for me is definitely Jared Bynum. I mean, he was in my Mania seat lineup, and he absolutely failed. Probably a mistake on my part. He was so good in the middle to end of the year. And in the tournament, he's had 13 and 22 fantasy points. Part of that has to do with Reeves coming back. The guard rotation is a little bit more spread out again. But definitely in large field, I'm going to take some shots on him. So, those are probably my 2 favorite options here. But Providence is running a little bit bigger of a rotation than what we've seen throughout the year.
Yeah, I've ridden that Bynum wave myself, both good and bad, right? Like I was on him when he had that near 50 burger against Villanova not that long ago. So to see him cool off to this extent, it's not going to feel great, but most people are going to be off of Bynum as it is, and just in general, I think this kind of mid to low 6K range is going to go pretty overlooked. And there's another guy here, Al Durham, that's sitting right at that price point. Do you think he's maybe a guy that you want to take some darts on, or are you looking elsewhere for your secondary Friar pieces?
Yeah, I like Durham. I mean, his minutes are kind of all over the place with the guards here, but you're kind of getting the high 20s here, low 30s with him. But the pace up spot, I don't mind it. He's more of a cash option, right? I mean, 31 and 25 fantasy points in the first 2 tournament games. Man, there's just, outside of a 20% assist rate, I mean, he's really going to have to be a tournament option. He's really going to have to give you some steals and, maybe some rebounding upside, but there's just not much there. So don't mind him. I probably will have like maybe one share of him, but not going to go crazy on it. Nate Watson, man, like very disappointing. 5,700 for a guy this size. I mean, he should be doubling and dominating. Both of the bigs in this game have been pretty disappointing. But Watson is just one of those guys that I throw him in a tournament every time, just praying and hoping for that 6X game, and it basically never happens. So if you want to get crazy, go ahead and do it. I'm completely off of him. I'm just going to kind of move on. Most of my exposure from this game will come from Horkler with Bynum and then maybe a shot on a Durham.
So moving on to one of the blue chip programs still remaining in this tournament, the Kansas Jayhawks. A lot of the more expensive guys on the board here. One of my favorite or our favorite sort of mid-tier or once lower cost option. Really been playing with his hair on fire. So why don't you start by breaking down the Jayhawks for us?
Yeah, so Ochai Agbaji, once at the beginning of the year and towards the middle of the year, was almost an auto play at this price point, right? We saw him creeping up towards that 9K range. Just really does it by scoring the ball, a little bit of rebounding, but not much else, right? I mean, he's kind of fallen off a little bit. Our guy here in my favorite play, Remy Martin, has really emerged, right? We've seen him put up 37 against Creighton that second round. He's been really good since the Big 12 title games with 3 straight games here. Been producing. The price is starting to come up now. We don't no longer get to play him in that 4 to 5K range, close to that 6K range. Now he's going to be playing 30 minutes. And I mean, this guy was, preseason all Big 12 player of the year. So fully healthy now. Definitely looking to get him into a pretty good chunk of my lineups. This game kind of scares me though. I think of all the games, this has the best chance to go under. I just feel like Providence can really muck up this game and get ugly. They can use a lot of fouls now that they're using a larger rotation. We've seen them play stout defense. Both of these teams play a traditional big for 25 minutes of the game. So, so there's going to be some dump in and post ups. But for the most part, I'm looking to get Remy Martin in my lineup. So I don't mind someone like Christian Braun as a large field option. He's 7,700. It's, not a great price tag, right, for, someone that probably lives in the high 20s, the low 30s as we finish up the year here. But he's got 40 fantasy point upside if everything goes right. He's more of a one-off option for me in a large field tournament. But I'm going to have a little bit of exposure to him, maybe 1, maybe 2.
Yeah, trying to kind of track along with where Remy's price is going to fall has been an interesting sort of subplot throughout this tournament, right? I mean, we're not that far removed from him in the low 4K range, and I wouldn't have been surprised to see him land like in the mid high 6s, given how well he's been playing and how much run he's been getting. It definitely does feel like it is, eaten into some of the guard play elsewhere on this Jayhawks roster. Even at 5,900, I mean, if it feels like Remy's probably going to be one of the 2 or 3 more popular guys on the slate. Do you get a similar read, and is that chalk worth eating, or do we maybe look to get kind of underweight to the fields?
Yeah, I think people are going to look at the game logs. They're going to see, oh, man, like I can play Remy Martin, who's on the upswing here, and he's going to give me my 5X, and I can move on, which is if he's going to be that popular, it'd be 30%, 40%. I probably want to be at 15 to 20% exposure. Maybe get off on him and maybe play an Agbaji, maybe play a Christian Braun to see if one of those guys has a ceiling type game. But for me, I mean, yeah, I don't know how to really approach this game yet. This is the one that's going to really come down to the wire for me as far as how I want to attack it. I know I want Remy Martin shares. I know I want to toss in some Agbaji and Braun. Jalen Wilson's another guy, right? He's been playing pretty well. Just kind of spreading it out all over the place here with the Kansas side here. So, 7,000 Jalen Wilson. I mean, he has 5X upside, but there's some volatility here. Definitely just more of a larger GPP option here. Are you going to get any shares of Wilson?
Yeah, I will. I mean, generally, the pay up guards feel pretty scary as, Remy continues to get back to form. So that by default puts me more on the forward side of this game. And maybe the only kind of caveat to that is having watched a fair amount of the Jayhawks in their, both of their tournament runs, it feels like Martin's game is taking a bite out of Abaji's more than it is Braun's. So maybe I'll have a bit more Braun. Just given it feels like he's a bit more versatile player in this offense. He's in that sort of no man's land from a pricing standpoint. So the way you put it really captures it perfectly. There's a lot to chew on here. I know I want Jayhawk exposure. It's just a matter of how much of the chalk you want to eat with Martin, and which of the other guys ultimately you want to get kind of rotating around or in his place. Feels like the forwards are probably the smarter play, but I haven't quite settled in on the approach that I want to take yet.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's exactly how I feel. It's going to kind of come down to one of those game time decisions. I know this is a game I'm probably kind of like the first one. I don't know if I really want to have too many, 2x3 stacks. I'm really looking at the next two games to really get some of my exposure to, like larger stacks. So definitely going to have some interest in some of these guys here, but I think overall, man, it's more of just a one-off, maybe a one-by-one mini stack. Kind of setting this thing off, but if we get any kind of news or anything comes out, I mean, that's all you got to pay attention to everything leading up to lock here. Starting lineup change, maybe Remy gets into the starting lineup, just a bunch of different subplots we can look at.
Yep. And the best place to stay up to date on that latest information is in the CBB Discord over at drroto.com. Get yourself in there, get signed up, get that latest news, and get those freshest lineups in. Moving on to our third game, we've got a 4-8 matchup in the Sweet 16. The UCLA Bruins and the North Carolina Tar Heels that that dude, Mike Holland, had in our bracket that we broke down. If you're following along, you're at least no worse than fifth place in your pool had you clicked along with the magic we put together on the left side of that bracket. Really rare matchup, but both of these teams felt like they were a little bit underseeded, so not crazy surprising to see them advance this far. Now in the round of 16, really interesting matchup. Which side of this game you want to start with, Mike?
Yeah, this is the one I can't really get away from, right? I mean, we've been playing North Carolina and being profitable all year on these guys. UCLA, the rotations, like the guys are on the court, the guys that are going to get usage, and they're all playable at their price points. You can definitely run a 3x2 in this type of game. When you start with the UCLA side, I mean, there's some injury news here. Jaime Hawk is dealing with a little bit of an ankle. All signs point to him giving it a go and being okay to go. We saw him at 41 fantasy points against Akron. Going to kind of throw out the 17 against St. Mary's because they're just obviously a tough bunch that don't like to play with any type of pace. So, this is a pace up spot. North Carolina 32nd in tempo, or UCLA will get out and run if they have somebody to run with. So I know UCLA is 271st in tempo, but we saw last year they'll get up and run with people. So definitely like the pace up spot for the Bruins here. Johnny Giuseng, man, I feel like he's the key to this game, right? To play him or not to play him. I mean, he's 8K earlier in the year, went through the injuries, got huge upside, almost a 30% shot rate. He's got to do it by scoring. Doesn't really give you much else, but man, in this type of game environment, North Carolina, they give up a lot of threes. You can see this guy dropping 20 to 25 real points and start, it can propel them to a run to maybe a Final Four here. So, I do like Giuseng a lot for tournaments.
So, being that we are largely taking a tournament perspective, any other guys here that either make an interesting pairing alongside Giuseng, or that just generally you think aren't going to carry as much ownership as they should for the Bruins?
Yeah, so I mean, the other two guys here, Jules Bernard, I don't feel like his ownership's going to be that high, especially when you can pay $100 more for Giuseng or go down to $200 to Tiger Campbell. So I feel like he's going to be pretty low owned here. He's going to get 30 to 35 minutes. He's got 5x upside. He can do a lot. He can rebound, he can pass, he can do a little bit of scoring here. I like him for cash game type settings, but don't mind him. He's a sneaky tournament option. I think Tiger Campbell is a really good tournament option here. 20% shot rate, 24% assist rate. He's got some steal upside. He's probably my favorite tournament option. I mean, he's been 25 fantasy points in the first 2 games. So you're looking at that and you're saying, okay, here's your 4X. Where's the upside, right? I mean, we've seen him drop 35, 40 fantasy points. So, in a spot here where, UNC guards are going to be running up and down, trying to get, the pace pushed up here, you could see Tiger Campbell utilizing the 3 ball and that 24% assist rate and potentially getting up into the 30 fantasy point range. So he's definitely a really nice tournament option. What do you think?
So is it fair game to play either of those guys alongside Giuseng, or is there a different kind of pairing that you want to make your primary stack for the Bruins side?
Yeah, I think Campbell, with that assist rate, you can pair him with Giuseng. Giuseng runs off a lot of screens. He comes off some of those stagger screens where you can get the assist with Tiger Campbell. Don't know about pairing Bernard with Giuseng. Jaquez you can also pair with Giuseng because he does more of his work down low. He's going to have some assist upside, going to do much of the dirty work, rebounds, offensive putbacks, does a little bit of scoring from the elbows. So, I think Giuseng's definitely pairable with Campbell and Jaquez. I don't mind a stack with Campbell and really anybody you can pair with him just due to his assist rate. He's got some steal upside and can shoot some threes here. So definitely looking at 2 on this side. And then obviously on the other side, we can maybe get a little crazy.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first question on the other side, we have not only our price king, but a true price king, right? We're not looking at this mid 8K price king from tonight's slate, right? We've got Baycott up there all the way at 9.5K. Let's start with this guy. I mean, is he going to be worth the price of admission, or do you think that sitting all the way up there? I mean, he is a considerable amount more than the next player on the board, Jaden Ivey at 8.2K. Do you think that people are just going to kind of move away from Baycott, or do you think that they're going to pay up?
Man, what do we do here, right? We've been making money on this guy all year. 9,400, 16 points, 12 rebounds, has some block upside, can even get you a couple of assists with that 10% assist rate. Coming off the 49 burger here against Baylor, and he didn't even really play that well in that game. That's what's kind of crazy. I mean, 34 fantasy points in 7 straight. So you should eat in this matchup, but UCLA, not great at defending bigs. I mean, they got some big bodies that are in there. They're more plotters, though, so you can see Baycott using his athleticism to, get some offensive putbacks and, kind of dominate on the inside here. So, I think with the value that's a little bit more accessible in this slate, I think you can get to him a lot easier than you could, especially with the UCLA side. If you're stacking right, if you're playing Tiger Campbell and Giuseng together, I mean, you're only paying $12K, and then you throw in a Baycott and someone like Caleb Love, who I'm really liking his price, right? And man, he might burn me, but 6,800. I can't remember the last time he was this cheap. 25% shot rate, 20% assist rate. And the guy can flat out score. He can make things happen. A really fun player. The price come down after the Baylor game where he fouled out and just really didn't have a great performance. So Baylor's really good defensively. So definitely looking to pair those 2 guys together a lot. 5 to 6X upside at that. And like I said, this is just one of my favorite game environments. I feel like the Tar Heels can really push UCLA to play faster in this spot.
So maybe kind of walking down narrative street a little bit, right? Like, we have to make a decision on Baycott. With how pricing is unfolding right now, it feels like we can certainly get there. Super safe, super steady, right? This is still a 4-game slate, so having a guy whose floor is in the mid-30s has a lot of value to it, right? So maybe walk me through 2 scenarios. One where you're playing Baycott. What if any other Tar Heel pieces do you want to fire up with him? Fade him. Where that puts you for your North Carolina side of the build?
Yeah, so we've got to pay attention to Brady Manick here, right? A little bit of a price decrease. He's 7,100 right now. Definitely playable with one of the guards, Love or RJ Davis here. So definitely someone that I'm looking to get some exposure to as my dog continues to go ham in the background. But I think people are going to game log watch him.
He's a manic guy himself.
He really is a manic. So don't get a puppy when you have two young kids. It's just more stress. But Brady Manick here, I mean, people are going to game log watch, and they're going to see 37 against Baylor. They're going to see the 53 against Marquette, and he's going to be more popular than he's ever been, man. We were getting this guy at 6%, 10%, like 8%, just busting people up, especially playing him against teams that can't really guard bigs, right? I think I know where you're going by maybe playing a Baycott with Manick. But I think for me, if I'm pivoting, I'll be pivoting off Baycott, coming down to Manick and playing him with the Love or a Davis here. And don't mind Davis, right? Same thing. We pretty much jammed him in all year with Manick or with Baycott as that second piece on North Carolina. We really rewarded in the last game here where he went for 48 against Baylor, which is absolutely unstoppable. I feel like Manick and Davis after that game are going to be a little more popular. People are going to be down on Love. And so and then obviously the price tag on Baycott just makes it a little bit tougher. So, definitely don't mind using any of these four. Definitely looking at least two, maybe a third, if you feel like this game could go over. But as of right now, I'm really concentrating on a 2x2 stack for this entire game.
And so at least as you're walking through those options, right, like we have to account for the propensity of people to box score watch. So, a lot of what I'm hearing while, Manick, while Davis are fine options in their own right, it sounds like Baycott is probably going to be a bit more overlooked than he should. So, that has me more inclined to plant my flag there and to look to find some cost savings and get different elsewhere. The last stop on this train, last place where we can potentially get different, another interesting Sweet 16 pairing, 10-11 matchup, number 10 Miami Hurricanes. We've got the number 11 Iowa State Cyclones, 133.5 game total. You want to kick us off with the technical underdog here with Iowa State and Cyclones?
Yeah, definitely. So this is an interesting game, right? I don't think anybody should be surprised that these two teams are right here, though. I mean, look at Iowa State. At one point, they were in the top 15. You look at Miami. At one point, they're in the top 25. They had some great wins. So no one should be surprised. Guard play, right? Both teams have really good guard play. They're both three-headed monsters with guards. The difference here is that Iowa State's one of the best defensive teams in the country. They're fifth in defensive efficiency. And Miami's 18th in offense. So they couldn't be more different, right? They're 18th in offensive efficiency. So, where Miami's great offensively, they had trouble stopping bigs. And where Iowa State's great defensively, they really struggle to put the ball in the basket and don't really have dominant big men. So, yeah, definitely a contrasting style. If you look at the effective field goal percentage, and you can just see that Iowa State 207th, right? Whereas Miami's 30th, and that's what's really propelled them to take down USC and Auburn. But this can be a different style, right? I mean, USC and Auburn, they're putting, those bigs and high ball screens, Mobley and Kessler, and one of those three guards was just eating. So definitely an interesting game. This is probably going to be the most fun game to watch, I feel like, from a macro view, as far as, we could potentially get an overtime game here. I mean, these teams are definitely going to be one to keep your eye on here. So if you go over an overtime here, man, this could be some fantasy goodness. We'll start with Iowa State, right? Isaiah Brockington, 7,400, 30% shot rate, which is, you love to see that, right? 25% combined rebounding rate for a guard, even gives you a little bit of assist upside. I mean, he's the top dog here. I mean, he lived in that 30 to 40 fantasy point range from a lot of the season. And to now see him with 7,400 in this matchup where Miami doesn't really have, that interior presence that's going to stop him from getting to the rim. That's where he does a lot of his work, is in the paint. So he's got a lot of upside in this spot right here. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him drop 35 to 40 fantasy points. I should be able to get inside the teeth of the defense and make some things happen. And then Gabe Calher, I played him last slate, rewarded me with 32 fantasy points. Wasn't able to really turn that into much, which was pretty depressing. But he's only 4,800 now. I mean, like I said, Miami just defensively isn't the greatest team in the world. They do most of their heavy lifting on the offensive side. We know Miami can give up the three ball. He can hit the three ball. So definitely someone that I'm looking at as well.
So you sort of teased it at the top that we've been firing up bigs against Miami pretty much all season long, and by and large, maybe setting aside their first round matchup against USC, it's been a winning strategy. Is there anyone of size for the Cyclones that you think can exploit this matchup, or are they just too guard focused to make their big men an appealing option?
Yeah. I mean, outside of Kunk, who's 4,800, I mean, he's only got a 14% shot rate. Doesn't really play big minutes. He's going to get minutes in the 20s. Could he get a boost here? Yeah, but I mean, 20 fantasy points on this slate. Don't know if that's going to be enough to really, really move the needle here when you got some of these, somebody like a Banks at 5,200 could go for 30. Don't know if we need it, especially with Calher being at 4,800. The bigger shot rate and going up against these guards, they're probably going to need to score a little bit more. And he's really the only guy that has some outside shooting threat here for the guards. So yeah, I just don't love it here for the big. So I actually like Miami in this game. As far as betting lines here, and I don't know why they're the underdog the way they've been playing. I feel like they should probably be 2 or 3 point favorites here.
So we'll move over to the Hurricanes, a team that has been chronically underpriced for what feels like the last month or so, and what's old is new again, right? They're still at least from a points per dollar standpoint a bit less expensive, a bit lower than they really should be. So why don't you kick us off with one of my favorites, Mr. McGusty, and then walk us through a few other options here for the Canes.
Yeah, your boy, Cameron McGusty, man, 7,600. I mean, we saw that price tag last round, right? Had to jump right on top of that. That was one of our core plays here, 43 fantasy points against Auburn. The price is back up, though. 7,600. The matchup isn't great, right? We just talked about it. Iowa State 5th in defensive efficiency. So it should keep his ownership low. So a great tournament option here. Definitely don't mind playing large field options here. I'm definitely going to take a shot here on some tournament teams with him. I think we got to talk about Charlie Moore, though, man. What he's done in the tournament's been fantastic. What he's done over the last 5 games, been over 30 fantasy points in those games, and really hit that ceiling with that 44 fantasy point Auburn game. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what the field does with Miami, right? Because it's not a great matchup. The implied totals aren't great. They're coming off, you game log watching, you're like, oh, man, like I need to get a piece of this. But, this game has the potential to just be absolutely ugly. For both sides. I don't think it will. I think it's going to play a little bit faster than what we anticipate, especially with both teams not really having anybody that can block shots. So I feel like these 6 guards on these teams are just going to, be able to get what they want. So don't mind the over on this one. And definitely Moore gives you that steal upside. Obviously that 2-point steal upside here is always nice if you can get 3 or 4. So definitely someone that I'm looking to attack here.
So you mentioned the box score watching. It's going to happen again, right? That last stretch of minutes for Miami this last time out against Auburn was absolutely insane. So I think that's going to stick out in people's minds. Is there anybody that is maybe a bit of a sneakier play for the Hurricanes?
I think Sam Wardenberg is interesting. 5,800. Man, the shot rate's not great. He's playing a ton of minutes. A little bit of rebounding upside. I mean, sneaky 4 to 5x upside. Not going to go crazy here, but I don't mind playing one guard and playing him. He's really the only big I'm really looking at. I know Jordan Miller was great all year. He's now 6,700. I don't know if I'm going to get there. The shot rate isn't great for him either. He does most of his damage on rebounds and getting some of that steal and block upside. Just hasn't really done much in the tournament either. I mean, he's sneaky for large field because I don't think a lot of people are going to be on him. But I'm looking at Wardenberg here. Probably going to garner no ownership, and he can stretch the floor and shoot the 3. And so I definitely don't mind him for gobbling up some of these rebounds. Could get 7 or 8 rebounds here. So definitely someone I'm looking to get into with maybe a McGusty or more, and then potentially running it back with Brockington on the other side. You got you a little 2-by-1 in this spot here. The game that I really like to go over. We got to be careful here though, because like I said, Iowa State's been pretty tough defensively all year, but just with the opposing bigs, we'll keep saying it. I just feel like the lanes are going to be pretty easy to get into and be able to make passes out to these other guards that'll get wide open shots.
So that concludes our game by game breakdown. It sounds like on the whole, there's not really any game that you're, looking to overstack. So maybe as we close out, kind of walk us through, where you think your stacks are going to lie in terms of, how many on each side of a game, which games you're prioritizing as more of kind of the one-off pieces. Let's spend a few minutes on kind of the roster construction side of the build.
Yeah. My first roster construction is really going to start with North Carolina, UCLA, looking at a 2x2. Really tough to get to a 3x2 in that scenario. Just there's not really that cheap play. It's mostly mid-tier pricing, and then obviously you got Baycott in there as the price king. So you're gonna have to find some one-off pieces. Maybe someone from St. Peter's, or maybe a Wardenberg and Remy Martin to kind of make that thing really come to life here. And then I don't mind sneaky game stack as Iowa State and Miami that we just talked about. I don't think I'm game stacking Purdue and St. Peter's at all. And then Kansas Providence, I just really struggle with that one. I just want to get most of my exposure to North Carolina and UCLA stacks. But, another stack that, if Kansas gets their way and they want to pace up and Providence wants to run with them, you can definitely play a 2x2 in that style. I don't know how often I can get to a 3x2 in a lot of these games because the total is just so ugly, and the pricing. I mean, the cheap guys you're looking at are from the St. Peter's team here, so it's not really like you're gonna run off a 2x2 or a 3x2 on that Purdue St. Peter's game. What are your thoughts on stacking and maybe playing balanced builds versus stars and scrubs?
Yeah, I mean, just generally speaking, whenever there are several viable paydown options, it feels like it leaves the mid tier as kind of the overlooked no man's land. So, initial thoughts, it feels like balance is probably the way to go. But we poke fun at my love of firing both forwards together. While that might be flawed in practice, the theory behind it, I think, has some credence to it, right? Like
The difference,
especially on these small slates, the way that you get different is not finding that diamond in the rough, right? Not finding that Wade that's going to put up 10x on a 4-game slate at 1%.
less than
about
1%.
how you combine players. So, you can do it the hard way. You can do it the easy way. For me, as I am still, relative to Mike, a novice at this game, the easiest way to get different is trying to find unique combinations. So that's very much so the lane that I'm going to be in and carrying forward in for tomorrow. Mike, any other thoughts for how to approach the slate? Any darts you want to throw? Anything that you want to close the people out with?
Yeah, no. I think it's really easy, right, to just go and click Baycott and one of the St. Peter's guys. Man, yeah, it's I don't know, man. That Purdue St. Peter's game, St. Peter's been on a really nice run. It wouldn't surprise me though if they only drop like 52 points, and really nobody gets there from the 4K range. So you got to be careful with that one. And then Purdue, I mean, obviously the rotations, it's like that's more of a stay away game for me. If I'm looking at it versus the other three games, when you look at the Iowa State Miami total, that one has a chance to go over. As you know, both teams with great guard play. So, no, I think just in general, we were, cooking it up 2 hours before lock, trying to figure out like how we could find any type of value in the slate that's going on right now, that I'm sweating real hard right now. So, yeah, I think this one's a little more cut and dry. I'm probably going to have on 40% of my lineups a St. Peter's player. It doesn't feel great, but it gives you that access. And you have guys like Remy Martin and Tiger Campbell are too cheap. That mid six range there, it's really soft, and you can get a lot of guys in there. So definitely not a lot of pay up options outside of our guy, right? Manic and Baycott. So don't mind living in that mid tier range. But like you said, you got to be different, right? You can't just play. I wish the salary was 70K so we could just get everybody we want, right? But that's just not how it works. So being different, taking some shots on some guys, you never know. You get that 1% guy that gets 10x and you put him with the right core players. There you go. You got a real nice lineup.
Yeah, in terms of how you arrive at a lineup that has you sweating very expensive bullets on live streams tomorrow night. It very much so is a process, right? We walk through the case that is there to be made for each player, but where the real work gets done is as we get closer to lock, as we get a better sense for ownership and where we can get different. And that conversation is one that is always ongoing over in the drroto.com Discord. That CBB channel is where we are dropping our core players. It's where we're reviewing lineups and finding different plays to pivot off of, to tweak, and to get different. If you are not in that Discord, you are flatly missing out. You are losing money. Get over to drroto.com, get signed up, get in that Discord, and let's get this bread.
Thanks for stopping by the office. Get your fantasy prescription by subscribing to the channel and checking out drroto.com. And until the next visit, be well and take care.